Welcome to the ADSW live web series. I am Lydia Elliott, the Deputy Director of Supplier Decarbonisation at the We Mean Business Coalition, and also a part of the core SME Climate Hub team with a focus on creating the tools that SMEs need to take climate action. Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week, ADSW, is a global initiative championed by the UAE and its clean powerhouse Masdar to accelerate sustainable development and advance economic, social, and environmental progress. One of its year-round platforms through which dialogue is maintained on leading issues and topics that are shaping the global sustainability agenda is the ADSW live web series. By welcoming thought leaders, industry experts, and civil society to share their insights and approaches to addressing the most pressing global challenges, the series is committed to facilitating knowledge exchange, boosting climate ambition, and fulfilling ADSW's purpose as the global platform to accelerate sustainable development and advance economic, social, and environmental progress. It is really important to host an episode on SMEs in the lead up to COP28. They are often an underheard voice in climate. SMEs comprise up to 90% of all businesses in the Middle East and North Africa. Hence, they form a major part of the region's economy and have an integral role to play in accelerating MENA's transition to net zero. Expanding the SME Climate Hub's regionalization in MENA will help us deliver the most inclusive COP to date, supporting SMEs with their climate goals and ensuring they are a vital part of our collective efforts to keep 1.5 degrees within reach. Which is why the COP28 presidency team have partnered with the SME Climate Hub to launch the COP28 and SME Climate Hub for MENA. With partners FAB, Masdar, and Abu Dhabi Chamber of Commerce, we're running a program of outreach to SMEs and putting SMEs solidly in the climate conversation, starting in the UAE and reaching out across the region, so far to Egypt and Morocco. Building on the global impact of COP28, ADSW's mission is to drive positive change by empowering a community of action through hosting inclusive global dialogues and sharing best practice and tools that enable better decision-making. So after that introduction to where we are and why we're all here, I wanted to introduce our speakers, and I'm really honoured to be joined by Adrienne Doolan, CEO of Green Touches, Christina Struler, the Vice President of Corporate Affairs at SMEs at UPS, and Shagil Bashir, Chief Sustainability Officer of First Abu Dhabi Bank, FAB. I want to give each of our speakers a chance to introduce themselves, why they're here, and also why they care about this topic of SME climate action. Adriana, can I get you to start us off and introduce yourself?
Thank you. Well, given that I'm the SME here, I suppose that's very appropriate. Thank you, Lydia. I'm Adrienne Doolan. I am CEO and founder of an SME called Green Touches. We provide sustainable cleaning services whereby we save water, energy, and we give advice to companies on how they can start making changes to create healthy indoor environments. We also are product suppliers for any indoor air quality non-toxic products. And we've just recently started a food waste management program. I've been a climate activist all my life, caring for Mother Nature. So everything I do, I work at, has to have an impact on the environment. I also represent a group called Sustain UAE, and we've grown since 2019 now to a group of around 300 impactful SMEs. And all working and sometimes struggling. And I think that's where we'll have the conversation later. I'm also delighted to say that we're going to be part of the ADSW program at COP28. So we get to highlight the wonderful work that a lot of the SMEs are doing in the country. So thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Amazing. Thank you so much for such a great introduction. And also, I love the peer-to-peer learning element. I think that's really important. So it's great to hear about that. Now I'm going to hand over to Christina to give us an introduction.
Thank you, Lydia. It's glad to be here. As you mentioned, I'm leading corporate affairs for UPS in the region. So my role includes all the public affairs work, government relations, communications, the impactful work of our UPS Foundation, and as well as sustainability. So for all of you who are not really familiar with UPS and what we do, we are a transportation and logistics leader offering innovative solutions to our customers, big and small. On any given day, we move about 2% of the global GDP and 5% of the US GDP. We have been in the region for more than 30 years, but globally, we began our journey 116 years ago as a very small messenger service started by two very entrepreneurial teenagers and $100 loan. And today, we have more than 500,000 UPSs around the globe. So we are not just moving goods, but as well we are doing good. And we are committed to reducing our impact on the environment and supporting the communities across the more than 200 countries and territories we serve around the world. Having more than 120,000 delivery cars on the road and 291 UPS aircraft in the air every single day, we are committed to being carbon neutral by 2050. And for that, we really set a very clear goals and roadmap along the way to achieve a lower carbon footprint in a very financially, but as well socially responsible way. We also committed to improve the well-being of 1 billion lives by 2040. And our leadership really remains focused on making very credible, but as well purposeful changes to adapt and achieve our sustainability goals along the supply chain. We explore many different ways on how we can actually reduce our physical emissions across our entire supply chain and operations through different collaborations with public and private partners to develop different solutions such as carbon neutral shipping. Overall, technology underpins everything that we do, and it supports as well our long-term success as we transform our network with innovation-driven investments such as EVs, climate-conscious facilities, and as well electric aircraft. Our global fleet so far includes already 18,000 alternative fuel and advanced vehicles. And what is pretty cool is actually that we're investing in technologies like electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, like an eVTOL. And earlier this year, we partnered with the UAE Ministry of Economy, the UAE Reg Lab, as well with the GCAA to test an electric aircraft manufactured for one of these startups in the US called Better Technologies, which can carry around 1,400 pounds and fly 170 miles per hour. So you see that there is a lot of different solutions we're working on, with the end result really to reduce vehicle emissions, operating costs, and transit time, helping us really deliver faster than ever. We are very confident that we can match our sustainability goals, but we know from our own customers, which are majority SMEs and SMBs, that they face a lot of challenges on their journey. So what we are doing at UPS, we are here to really help them. So we are committed to support them through different programs. And I'm really looking forward to talk a little bit more about the different programs we are having globally, but as well here in the MENA region. And overall, it's really about efficiency is core for us to sustainability, and the greenest mile is always the one which we never drive or fly. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Christina. And it's great to see the different perspectives you can bring from the SMEs within your own supply chain, but also the SMEs who are your customers. So I think that's really great because it's transport is such an integral part for so many SMEs and their supply chains. Amazing, thank you so much. And then I'm going to move to our final panelist, who is Shakil Bashir. And Shakil, I'm gonna hand it over to you to introduce yourself and why you're here and why you believe this is really important.
Thank you so much, Lydia. And first of all, thank you to ADSW to hosting this conversation, which is extremely important in the journey towards decarbonization and net zero. And thank you very much for inviting me. So my name is Shakil. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer at the First Abu Dhabi Bank. First Abu Dhabi Bank, also known as FAB, is one of the largest banks in the region and has a global strategic footprint across 20 countries. And has been doing a lot of work on the sustainability for many years. The reason that I'm here and FAB has a strong interest in this specific topic around SMEs and the decarbonization is that in 2021 we made a commitment to become net zero, and we did this through joining the UNEP FI's Net Zero Banking Alliance, which is a global framework that brings together the banks that voluntarily signs up to do decarbonization to net zero by 2050. And we follow those specific principles. We joined this commitment, and the reason we joined this commitment was that we wanted to support our clients and our stakeholders in their decarbonization. Being the biggest bank in the UAE, we have a responsibility to support the government in their ambitions and supporting our clients in their transition. Us ourselves as a bank who does not have production facilities, etc., our own emissions are relatively small. However, the impact or the emissions that are created through our financing are a very, very big number. So we wanted to participate in this conversation and actively contribute to supporting our clients when they're doing their transition. How can we guide them? How can we support them in this change? Because we do know that what is required is a lot. And we know that this is the biggest reallocation of capital that this generation will ever see. So much needs to happen, and we need to take that responsibility in support of that change. And this change cannot happen without the SMEs. SMEs are critical to the ecosystem, which will need to be part of this conversation in order to decarbonize. Because there are so many different aspects that SMEs contribute to that are important and critical for these journey on decarbonization. So that's why I'm here, and that's why that we at the First Abu Dhabi Bank are extremely keen to support all our clients, but also especially the SMEs who does not always have the same opportunities, but often have the same challenges as a lot of the larger corporates do, and how we can support from that perspective. I'm looking forward to having this conversation later on.
Amazing. Thank you, Shigil. And I totally agree. I think SMEs are often left out of some of the conversations, and financing is such an important part of some SMEs being able to take climate action. So it's great to have you here to bring that perspective. And I'm sure that everybody listening to all those introductions can see that we have some really interesting voices and perspectives, from an SME to large corporate supply chains and customers, SME customers, to the financing and looking at how this fits into the kind of global climate space. So I think we're set up for a really great conversation today, which is wonderful. So I'm going to kick us off on our open discussion now that we've had our introductions. And I'm going to ask my first question, Tadrian, because I want to always keep drawing us back to the SME viewpoint, because it's really important one to keep at the center of this discussion. So Adrian, my question is, how do you feel that SMEs can effectively integrate sustainability and net zero strategies into their operations and supply chains? Because it's a hard thing to do. So I'd like to have your perspective on how you think SMEs can practically really do that.
Yeah, delighted that you want to keep the SMEs at the fore of the conversation, let's say. Look, it's very easy. I mean, I run a very impactful, ethical, purpose-driven company. It's very easy as founder of the company, with my, my mission and my vision, to entirely incorporate sustainability within my whole supply chain, because I make the decisions on everything. And that sounds like I'm a real bully, but it's the only way to enforce change within the organization, so that we, try to ensure a very squeaky clean supply chain. But the challenges that we face for the supply chain is that larger suppliers are not on a sustainable journey. And I've had this a number of times during the week, because I was trying to, I'm a member of the United Nations Global Compact, and I'm on their task force for climate action. And I'm going to actually present the case for the SMEs next week at that. And I was, trying to look at doing our, monitoring our carbon footprint. And as you say, again, finance and resources always becomes the issue there, right? So how, do I have the resources enough to make a very, very accurate carbon calculation? And I don't really. So I think that's really important. My one sort of worry is within when we talk about the SMEs, there are an awful lot I know that are not on the journey. And so, that's something that really needs to, we really need to do this. I know with the initiative now that was launched on the 3rd of October by the COP presidency, that's like a fantastic start. Really good, because then the Climate Hub are offering their commitment and their pledge. And that's being offered for us to utilize this tool, this business calculator tool. But it's whether we can get people on that journey. And that's the important part. So, I mean, I support there's maybe 180 impactful SMEs within my organization. And, how do we get the other companies on board in order to start on the sustainable journey? Because it's not always, it can be a financial issue a lot of the times in order to make that choice. Because if you're a sustainable company, in general, your practices are more expensive, right? So if you go to tender to a larger corporate, you're not going to be chosen. No matter how much everybody wants to say they'll choose a supply chain that's that is carbon is decarbonizing, but that's not often the case. And I think that's something that we need to, I keep calling it unlock the block, because that's something I think that we really need to address.
No, I think that's a great introduction to some of the issues. No, you can keep going. Do you have more?
Yeah. Oh, I can go for hours. No, I had this the other day as well, when talking to an organization, and that, I was saying to them, look, it's really important that, because I'm measuring my impact, what are you doing? And this was a large corporate, and they're doing nothing. So that's a big struggle, right? So we can, because what we need now is to further this conversation, take much more fast action with SMEs. With we're suggesting like lots of mentoring programs from SMEs within our network that are all on the impactful route. We will help, but I can help the SMEs, but I'm not going to start on the corporates as well. So that's, right. And it's easier for us as smaller organizations, obviously, to implement sustainability. But what about the larger organizations? I think that's, that's where a huge amount of the impact comes as well.
Oh, completely. And the ability of a small business to influence the corporates within their own supply chains, that just doesn't, that it shouldn't be that way around at all. So I think that makes for very difficult positions for small businesses, because even when you're trying to do things, if you have players in your supply chain that won't move, you're very limited on the amount of leverage you can push. Even large corporates would say they're limited on the amount of leverage they have. So if you think about a small business, how is that meant to work? No, thank you very much for the introduction to the problems and the kind of some of the issues. I think that's great to pull out to set us off on the conversation. Okay, Christina, I'm going to call on you to talk to us from the large corporate perspective a little bit. So from your perspective, how do you think SME climate action contributes to corporate net zero goals, particularly thinking about supply chain decarbonisation? And then on the other side of that, what's the role of corporates to support SME climate action within their business networks and supply chains?
Yeah, thank you so much, Lydia. I think actually you made a lot of points which are very resonating as well, what we experience with the SMEs we are working with every day. I think what you were mentioning as well about some of the corporates, I think as corporate we have really a lot of influence, and as well we bring a lot of resources to the table, and that's what most of these smaller businesses don't have, right? When it comes to not just funding, but when it comes to resources, the experts on the team. Not everyone who runs a business like yourself is actually as well a sustainability champion, an expert who knows what to do. Most of them are struggling actually to understand how they can be part of that journey and where to get the resources from. So when I looked up as well a bit of especially with a focus on this region, and we understand that in this region, it's really about, in MENA, we have around 90% of all businesses which are considered SMEs. And they really have a very important role to play when it comes to the transition coming to net zero. And worldwide as well, SMEs are responsible for around 40 to 64% of industrial waste and contribute to like 50 to 70% of greenhouse gas emissions within the business sector. There's a lot of impact. And when you consider like an individual SME, it might not be looking that much, but when you kind of consolidate that, it's a really big impact to the environment. So it's really clear for us, SMEs are critical when it comes to developing those solutions we are looking for that will help us actually to address the climate crisis, but as well, they are very important for building those green economies. And despite we know that they're important, we see that many of the SMEs we get to work with lack the necessary tools, the financial resources, and as well, they don't have any of the I would say, understanding where they can start. So they're really struggling actually to even build out their own strategies on an agenda on where they want to go. So it's really hard for them to get started. When it comes to our business at UPS, SMEs make actually up a very large part of our customers globally, but they're as well often not well represented in the international cross-border shipping. And this is really like research has shown when we looked at that, cross-border shipping is a major driver for SMEs when they would like to grow and diversify. So we learned from our own SME customers that there are several issues they are facing, and there's complex collections of new environmental regulations and requirements which are pushed to them at every single day. I mean, across the world, they get new requirements from governments, large global buyers, some of their own customers, and all of them requesting that they adopt environmental friendly practices. But however, most of those really lack the resource and the know-how in order to adapt those requirements. And that's where it starts. And that is as well why we at UPS, we launched a program called the UPS Green Exporters Program. And through that program, we actually offer training and education to SMEs around the world for them to improve the supply chain and as well to boost access to new markets for especially sustainable products. Put it simply, whatever the issues are, we can kind of tackle them and overcome them by working with partners on that program. And the Green Exporters Program actually is in kind of listed in two parts. So one of the components is the training, and the second component would be an access to the SME 360 tool. Let me start with the training part. So all these participants are actually joining a series of training programs which are focusing on exporting, on sustainability, on certification, on marketing and trade agreements, but as well on customs and brokerage, which is very critical depending on the country you're shipping to, carbon accounting and standards, and as well carbon taxes and credit. So all these trainings actually are led by our UPS employees and some of those partners. For example, the International Chamber of Commerce is one of the key partners for the program. So together we kind of tailor making the curriculum to make it really impactful for different small and medium businesses. And then the second part is the SME 360 tool. And that's a really user-friendly digital assessment tool, which helps SMEs to measure, benchmark, and economically value the impact of their own business operations on the environment. And this is a free-to-use tool for all these different trainees which are going through our program. That was a co-developed one between the International Chamber of Commerce and the GIST Impact. And part of that program is basically you get access to the tool, and that helps you then to understand your environmental performance, the impact across the entire value chain and your network. It helps you to cut the cost and simplify as well sustainability reporting. And once an SME completes that assessment, then they can actually unlock the ICC, the International Chamber of Commerce SME 360 certification. And that helps them to demonstrate their achievement and build their credibility with other customers based on that program they went through. And they also actually can set their environmental pledges for the upcoming business year, so they can track the progress towards the sustainability goals over time, and that tool will help them. And as a result, we have been training since 2022 more than 900 SMEs, and that was across Latin America, Europe, and Asia. And another partner of that actually is quite interesting is USAID. And what we did with USAID on that program is the matchmaking. So what we did actually, we are matchmaking these SMEs with local buyers in order then to unlock the green supply chains. And when it comes then lastly to the policy implications, which is very relevant to my work I'm doing, it is really about the program results have been confirming to us that there is a mismatch between the policymakers' expectations for the business and the SMEs' awareness and ability to take advantage of that green transition, similar to what Adrienne said earlier. And then the primary goal really now going forward, understanding where the issue is for us to bring the voices of the SMEs to the policy discussion, make them have a seat at the table and on climate and environmental conversations, and as well ensure that these SMEs actually can take advantage of opportunities, especially when it comes to sustainability, and that reporting requirements are adapted to those different capabilities of SMEs.
Amazing. Thank you, Christina. And it's great to hear all the action you're taking with the SMBs in your supply chain and networks, because, you know, I know a lot of businesses who aren't taking that level of action to take 900 SMEs to train them, to kind of mentor them through. I think that's really excellent, because often within large corporate supply chains, they can be the forgotten element, if you like, of the supply chains, because there's a real focus on big spend, big emission suppliers, which makes total sense. But I often think then SMEs get left a little bit out of the discussion and get left a little bit behind, and have to then catch up.
Yeah, I think it's a win-win, Lydia. It's a win-win. It's a win-win for us because, you know, our scope 3 as well are some of those small and medium businesses. At the same time, for these businesses, if they do well, then we will do well as well. So I think it's a nice opportunity for all of us to work together and see the joint benefit of those programs.
Yeah, I completely agree. Amazing. Now, Shakil, I was going to ask you a kind of a similar question. You know, from your perspective, why is SME action so important for corporate supply chain decarbonization?
Yeah, and Lydia, I think I fully echo what Christina mentioned, right? But let me start in a different place. I think that climate change does not see any boundaries, right? And I think it's important to remember that. So if one country decarbonizes and achieves net zero and others or their neighbor country doesn't, it does not mean that you will not be impacted by climate change, right? You need collective efforts, right? Everybody needs to play their part in this journey, which means that the world will not become a livable place by 2050 if we globally don't address these challenges, right? It's not a country issue, it's a global issue. Similar way, it's not just that if the large corporates, you know, achieve net zero, then everything will be fantastic. We need everybody as part of that journey because, as I mentioned before, the ecosystem is so interlinked. And I think it's important to remember that, right? So there are, as an example, Middle East is one of the most impacted areas from climate change. So that's why that even if the Middle East does everything it can and achieves net zero, but if the rest of the world does not achieve it, it's not going to be enough. And exactly the same reason that one large corporate cannot change everything. And that's why we need the ecosystem. Everything underneath needs to bring it together. The large corporates have a big role to play. They can set the right incentive. They can support. I think Adrian made a fantastic point before that a lot of SMEs have started their sustainability journey, which is amazing and fantastic, while a lot of the large corporates haven't done that yet, right? So we need to bring everybody together in this journey. So the large corporates are started. We recently did a study with a partner where we saw that in this region, 80% of the larger companies have set now their ESG strategy. But more than 50% of them have done it because of compliance or regulatory reasons, which often also can mean that are you creating the right culture within your organization that is required to make that change on sustainability side. And if they are not creating that culture, how can they guide their supply chain on creating that culture? Or what is it that, how can you support on this? So these things go hand in hand. The supply chain is extremely important, right? Scope 3, which is basically your supply chain, the biggest part of it, is often made by SMEs. I think when we look at it from a UAE perspective, I think I sometimes saw a number that more than 50% of each company's scope 3 typically comes from the supply chain linked to the SMEs. So a lot of awareness raising needs to be done. A lot of initiatives has been taken. I think the SME Climate Hub is a fantastic initiative that is providing the tools that are required. Because I think the challenge, as Adrian mentioned, is large corporates have the resources, right? But sometimes the decision power, the processes, the governance processes in the organization can be lengthy, can be difficult until you get some of those decisions taken. But you have the resources. So once you can tick all the boxes with the governance, approvals, direction, then you can probably move fast. The difference is the SMEs are smaller organizations. They don't have their own sustainability department. They don't have the resources, etc. But they have the willingness and they have the quick decision making they can do, right? So if you can combine that, that's where really the success can happen. Can you combine this part that the SMEs are coming who can really make this change if the right incentives are put out there, if the right direction is set for them, and if the right support is provided to them, it's much easier to make that change happen. And it's so critical that these incentives, which can be raising awareness, supporting them, sharing best practices, it doesn't always need to be financial incentives. When we speak with the SMEs, often they just want guidance, right? They want to understand that, what is required from our side? How can we support on this? How can we start this journey? Which is much more important than a financial incentive because they see the opportunity on this. They see the change that is required. So I think that's why it's extremely important to link this decarbonization part because we as a large corporate cannot decarbonize without removing our scope 3 emissions. And for there we need to support our supply chain. We need to put the incentives in place. We need to work together with them around these things, right? And sometimes it's also about making some hard decisions, right? I do believe that we will in the future come to a point where you will have large corporates that will be saying that if you do not have made a commitment to net zero, have you not put in place a decarbonization plan? Have you not taken these and these steps? I'm sorry, you cannot be a supplier for us in the future. And I know that a lot of international companies are starting to doing that. And I think that is the direction we are moving into. So something is gonna hit all of us, like net zero, right? Some of us have been hit by regulation, some of it has been hit by the customer demand, some of it will be hit by other impacts to accelerate this journey. And that's why these SMEs will need to accelerate this journey. The push can come from the companies, whether they might not have the orders they used to have because they don't live up to these things, but it's a joint effort, right? So I think that's extremely important that this interlink is so critical that we cannot succeed. We cannot have a sustainable transition to net zero with not having that collaboration to supporting the SMEs, guiding them, raising awareness on this journey so we can decarbonize.
Oh, completely. And I think collaboration is a really important part of this because it isn't something that just one player doing one thing will solve such a tricky problem. The collaboration is incredibly important.
And I think that's sorry, Leah, just to comment. I just think that you're absolutely right, and I think that's why partnerships are so critical, right?
Yeah,
the partnerships
exactly.
between different parties, right? That can make this a success. And you're seeing a lot of initiatives coming. Christina mentioned quite a few, but a lot of initiatives are coming through now, where the large corporates, SMEs goes together, right? We are seeing accelerators working on climate change, going and collaborating with large corporates, whether it's climate tech or there are other kind of solutions. So those partnerships, all that innovation can really support on that change. And honestly, some of the best innovations comes from SMEs, right? Because they have these brilliant ideas and then they can just go and execute. And I think that is so crucial in this journey, which they can bring to the table.
Well, exactly. And
there on that one.
Of course you can.
Because just what Shargul's saying is really important is that the SMEs, the startups, they generally come with the the innovative new ideas. That's that's why we are SMEs and startups. One of the points where he mentions on the whole financial issue, one of the things I often think of is if in the country, and then I'm really talking about now in the UAE, and this can be something global as well. If the costs are reduced on SMEs in the country, for instance, licensing costs, visa costs, all of these things, then we can make ourselves much more competitive within the market. And I think that's really, you know, so regulatory issues, because for me, as a, you know, as an impactful company, paying the same prices, or actually in fact much more for visas, because you're in a different category and everything, and yet I have very different provisos, because I'm paying more on salaries. I'm doing, you know, trying to do the right thing, being a Global Compact member as well, and supporting the SDGs. So, you know, if regulations can come in to cut those kind of costs on the SMEs, that can be really helpful. Because I see, you know, I see loads of startups. We have so many startups in our group as well, pitching to get finance, and a lot of the time it's not working. And you know, and I know of lots of stories, and I'm sure you do as well, within the country, where and this is something I think that also needs to be really attended to, is it's very difficult for SMEs and startups to actually approach banks to get loans. And I know there's loads of reasons for this, but I have seen recently where a bank has been approached, not you guys, but and it shall remain nameless, but a bank has been approached and the loan was refused to the business. And then the business went a different way to get the loan, and paying a huge interest rate, but got the loan back from the same bank that had first refused them. So, you know, right. So these are really the things that have to be addressed if we really want to make changes. And, you know, as you said, we have to decarbonize by 2050 in order to provide a future for humanity. So these are the small things that can really, really help. Maybe, you know, in the bigger picture, certainly to support, if you're talking about supporting the SMEs, we don't just need free tools. We need much more support than that, from a regulatory government to the banking industry as well, I think.
And if I
Maybe
get
it's worth coming.
okay, just comment. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I just want to say that no, you're absolutely right that you know the SMEs historically have had difficulties to get the fund, right. If you look at the overall bank's balance sheet, right, it's not always the SMEs that are a big part of that. However, I will say that I have experienced a change over the past probably 5-10 years in this movement that has happened. So there's a lot of regulation things that why not more funding goes to the SME part, right? Because typically they're more riskier. The banks, they'll live off assessing risks, and since you have a lot of innovative ideas that have not been proven, because banks typically lend to proven ideas. So those are some of the challenges, and I agree with you that, you know, with some standards, guidelines, that could be helped as well. But I also think that, you know, the partnerships have really supported here, because, and I'm probably going to come with a statement here that I'm not sure that I can fully show facts behind, but I think that SMEs as a startup, it has never been easier to get access to capital than it is today. It has never been more easier, right? And I'm not saying that it's easy for everyone, but let's think about that. You have multiple funds today that can support you. So in the UAE, you have Khalifa Fund as an example that can support you. You have more development banks coming in here. You're seeing accelerators coming through, incubators. We're also starting to see larger companies setting up hackathons to support the great ideas, the innovation that is needed. Because I think everybody around the table have now recognized that the challenges we face are not cannot be addressed by what we have today. We need more innovation. We need more ideas to support that. And because the current system does not allow to let the funds flow as freely and etc. on the SMEs, because those are unproven ideas, let's find alternatives how we can do so, right? So we set up these accelerators that companies can go and say, so for me as a bank can say, listen, we're gonna invest in the best climate tech ideas for financial industry, as an example. So we those ways can support in that. And I think we need much more of that. And at the same time, address some of the points that you raised as well, right? Because I don't think there's only one solution that can make this a success. I think we need to work parallel on multiple of these solutions. And I think this is where the partnerships are really becoming fruitful. And I think, again, the SME Climate Hub is a great example of this, right? Where you bring multiple different players together and say, listen, how can we support from this perspective? And I do recognize it's not direct financing, it's just tools, but I think that all these different things adding up can really make a strong journey and concrete action on decarbonization.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And the beautiful thing is now about all these initiatives, is that the SMEs are finally getting a voice, which is fantastic. And I can see this, accelerating to the good of everybody, because I think we all understand now that we have to work together. You keep talking about collaborations and partnerships. And this is the only way now to achieve our climate action. I even heard about a couple of weeks ago when they say when logistic companies come, all competitors come to the table together, then we know that there's a definite need for climate change action.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to partnerships are crucial, but you have to find the right partner and bring them to the table to share those knowledge and best practices and resources. And I think what we do as well, it's about where's your expertise? For us, it's trade. We're doing this for 116 years. How can we help small businesses to be more efficient? How can we help them on that journey to become more sustainable as a business? So what we're doing, for example, one of the programs we're running since 2018 is actually the Women Exporters Program. And that is not just UPS, that is in every country, we bring in different partners. And finance is a big topic, right? So we bring in a financial institution. It's all about how to get paid, right? What is your payment solution? Marketing, branding, these are different topics. And then we provide those specific sessions and workshops and mentorship for the women-owned businesses in order for them then to really take advantage of that. And why women? It's really simple, because when we looked at who is most impacted when it comes to climate change, and that's really the small and medium businesses and women-owned businesses. And they have different challenges. Climate is one, but there's many more when it comes to societal norms that restricts them to access to resources, and as well some of the gender-based discrimination. So limited access to funding and next networks, as well as some of the difficulties in connecting with the marketplace, it's really causing big hurdles for those businesses. So what we did with the Women Exporters Program as an example, and actually we as well have that running in the UAE since 2018 with the UAE government. We're actually working very closely with the Dubai Department for Tourism and Industries. And that is where we bridge the gap when it comes to education and workforce participation between women and men by providing them those targeted assistance. And that is really all about market access, mentorship, networking, and really help those women overcome barriers to free trade. And so far, globally, we have trained more than 110,000 of women-owned business and SMEs, and in the region in MENA, 4,000. And I think that's just another good example how we can bring partners onto that journey. And I think from you, Shakil, what you mentioned, especially the Climate Hub, it can fulfill so many different opportunities. But most important is when we talk to SMEs, they want to find one location where they can find everything they need to do business sustainably. They cannot find things on different pages. They really need to have the one-stop shop which gives them the confidence that these are the information and as well some hand-holding which gets them there. So maybe the Climate Hub going forward could as well fulfill that they know exactly where to go to and they can actually rely to that information provided.
No, exactly. And I think what I'm hearing from all three of you is there are quite a few different elements that SMEs need to take climate action. So if you're starting off, one place to go that explains what on earth we're all talking about in a really clear way can be incredibly helpful. As you grow through your climate journey, you then have to encounter different issues like how you measure emissions, how you think about that within your business, how you actually integrate it. And then you often get to a place where finance is very important. And I think particularly for the more mature SMEs within the kind of climate action space, it becomes incredibly important to make some of those big moves. So I think this kind of layering of different pieces of information and different support is incredibly important.
Maybe just to add on, because we're talking about the programs, and I see a question was raised about the results, what we see. And I think that's the most important thing. We can do so many programs and impact so many women. If we don't know actually what is the impact, it doesn't make any difference. So what we do actually after each program, especially when it comes to 6, 8, and 12 months after the program, we go back to those participants and then we actually look at how many more, especially women, did they hire in the organization? How much is the increase in revenue? How many new markets did they access? And I think that's really critical numbers for us to understand. Did we produce significant impact or not? And that's really something which we then can as well showcase on the impact of such programs and why those are important to offer continuously.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Christina. And I think we are kind of having a great discussion about all the different support that is out there for SMEs, and support that's there and what support's needed in the future. And Adriana, I wanted to come back to you and see if you felt like we'd covered all the things that you think need to happen to encourage SMEs to take climate action and make a climate commitment. So we've talked a bit about financial, and a bit about having the right resources. But do you think there's anything else that really needs to happen to help support SMEs to start that climate journey? Because I agree with you, there are a huge number of SMEs out in the world. How do we get all of those SMEs taking climate action?
How do we get them? We stop working in silos. I think that's really important. And I think probably the Climate Hub, the We Mean Business Coalition, this action from the COP28 presidency, I think is a smart way. As Christina also said, it's a really smart way to get to get all the information on one platform together. And I think that's super important. So, globally, we can't at the moment take care of all the SMEs, but here we can concentrate on them within the region. And we're trying to get ourselves on a platform where we can reach out to all the other different business networks as well within, from the Swiss Business Network, French Business Network, the German Business Network, get their SMEs together. And a lot of them are not yet on their journey. And we said, listen, we can start offering mentorships. We can start offering programs, to get, start linking all companies together. Who are, so if you have a logistics company, not yet, SMEs working on not on their sustainable journey, link them with a company that's working in sustainability. So I think mentorship, and still I think education and creating an awareness is still there. There are, I tend to live in a sustainable bubble. When I go outside of that bubble, I tend to get a little bit shocked at, does not everybody know what's going on? So I think education and awareness is still critical. And I think that's something that governments can support. I'm hoping, from this COP28 now, that also within within the country itself, the conversation and the narrative has completely changed, so that maybe the government can start, pushing mandates. I think that's one of the ways that we're going to get companies on the journey, and both SMEs and corporates alike. So I think, creating education, awareness, and stop working in silos, that we really start to partner smartly together. And because at the end of the day, we're all in this together, right? We're all on the race to net zero. And we all know why we're doing it. And I think that's what we really need to let people know. Why are we doing this? Why are we bothering? Really, why is it? And I think that's one of the crucial elements that we need to start impacting on education and awareness.
Amazing, thank you. And yes, I completely agree with all those points. I think education awareness, people often, if you live in that sustainability bubble, you often think, oh, it's fine, everybody's doing this, and then you go and talk to an SME who's never really encountered climate action, and you get a completely different perspective. And I think it's very important to make sure that we're thinking about SMEs with that perspective, not just SMEs who are amazing green leaders, because really we need both. Now,
maybe just to add on as well, I think Adriana has fantastic points. And when those programs are existing, we need to make sure that actually people are aware of those as well and how to access them. Like, where can they find the information that those programs which we're talking about are actually accessible for everyone and they are free accessible. And then another point I think is important, what we try to do a lot of UPS is really storytelling. Let's talk about those success stories which benefited from those programs and how it benefited them, because that really encourages others to be part of the journey. If they understand that those small businesses actually won big contracts, given that they now have the capabilities and the resources and actually are becoming a more sustainable business, that might help as well to get the encouragement and empower others to do the same.
Yes, definitely. I think storytelling, it sounds unimportant, but being able to see that it's an achievable thing through looking at another small business who's like yourself can be a very powerful convincer to take the first steps of climate action.
Yeah.
Now, Christina, I wanted to give you space to talk about anything else that you wanted to bring out. If there was any of the UPS programs we haven't talked about yet, maybe that you covered them all because you've talked about so many.
We have too many programs, but I think one of those, given that one of the biggest challenges, and even though we are not a bank like Shachi, that's more about we have the foundation, the UPS Foundation, which is our philanthropic arm. So when it comes to all these women exporters we are working with, we understand that one of the biggest challenges that we talked about already is financing, is really funding those businesses. And in some of the markets, right, we don't talk about big investments. It's really micro loans. How can we extend small amounts of money which make a big impact to those businesses? And just recently I saw a survey, a report from NAMA and the UN done here in the MENA region. And while majority of the women, like 41%, were talking about the lack of access to markets is really like one of the biggest hurdles, just below the 39%, again, it was the unmet demand for credit and lack of access to finance. While we already have those programs for the market access, what we do now on the financing side, we actually found through the UPS Foundation a partner called Opportunity International. And we founded that program called the Unstoppable Women Initiative. And this is a partnership in order to empower those women and removing the economic barriers in order for them to succeed, and especially females which are living in those underserved communities. And it's a 3-year initiative impacting directly more than 48,000 women and a total reach of like 1.5 million. And that's across Nigeria and India and Indonesia and Colombia. And I think those are really critical markets to kind of touch those women which have not these great opportunities like most of the female entrepreneurs here in the UAE have. And the model we are using, it's called a partner-rich model, which works with financial institutions, with local governments, in multilateral agencies. And that helps them to increase the flow of capital to those women-owned businesses, but as well providing more than 23,000 women entrepreneurs with loans and connecting another 24,000 with financial services. And through those trainings and business support and financial services, the Unstoppable Women Initiative is there to empower these women as well to kind of become agents of change and enabling them as well to increase incomes and stimulate the inclusive economic growth. And obviously, when we support women, we know that it creates a ripple effect. It really helps these women in those countries who are working hard to build opportunity for their children. And I think sometimes, you know, when you have the opportunity with organizations like UPS and you have a foundation, there's really great impact for programs. And the more you talk about, the more other companies see an opportunity to as well chip in and support that. I think Adrienne was mentioning before, there are certain industry issues we always come together with our competimates. And I think when it comes to supporting those programs, there is no competition. It's more about the more we can actually get from companies to participate in, the better it is for the environment, the better it is for the people and the communities we serve. It's a win-win-win.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a space where I think getting rid of the notion of competition is incredibly important.
Exactly, and share resources and share best practices in order to move faster.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. And now, Shakil, I want to ask the final kind of question to you before I sum up this conversation, which sounds like a very difficult task because it's been a very rich conversation. But we've talked a lot about financing. So I wanted to see if you wanted to add anything more about what you think the role of banks is in supporting SME climate action, and then to kind of finish us off by saying how you see SME climate action contributing to the larger global net zero objectives.
Okay. So I think let's start with the financing part. I think us as banks, right? I think what we have a responsibility because we have multiple touch points. we see different kind of clients. We see individual private persons, SMEs, medium-sized, large corporates, government entities, but at the same time, we see different industries as well. So somehow the banking industry have that oversight of how things are moving, right? That is our role to support on that transition specifically and understanding those touch points and what does that mean. And then also coming with how can we support from a financing and finding the right solution for that. So I think that right now, how we can support is, as I mentioned previously, of course, through direct lending. And as I mentioned, I think there are definitely challenges for SMEs to just go to any bank and find lending right now or financing. It's not easy because of there are some regulation standards, etc. But there are alternative solutions where the financial industry is contributing or working with. I think that's one point to make. But also, I think that what I'm seeing banks and what we're also doing ourselves is that we are liaising in partnership with the larger corporates to say that how can we support the SME, right? And how can we decarbonize the supply chain? So as an example, we've done a couple of projects on sustainable supply chain financing, where we basically go to some larger corporates and say, listen, you have these 100 suppliers of yours, which are SMEs. Why don't we put some incentives together for these SMEs to start their journey, right? Which might be that, okay, within the next 12 months, all of them need to understand their own emissions, for example. And if you do so, you will get a financial incentive, right? So you put a financial incentive that is beneficial for them. And the following year, now you need to do your ESG reporting. If you do that, you again get a financial incentive and so on. And now what is fantastic is that while you're giving those incentives, you also have platforms like the SME Climate Hub that you can now also provide the tools, right? Because the question we used to get was, of course, that, okay, I would love to do this. I would love to understand what my emissions are. I would love to start reporting on this, but how should I do it, right? I can't afford to go and hire a consultant to do this and so on. And we don't have the time, we don't have the knowledge, how should we do it? But now we have a platform that can actually support in the region as well, specifically say, here are the tools, here is the access, this is what will help you start your journey on this specifically. So I think that combining these things together, bringing these partnerships together can really unlock some resources for different stakeholders, partners, SME, that how can we really start working on that. I think that is extremely important. I think the role of SMEs, as I mentioned before, they're such a big part of the ecosystem, right? Globally, I'm not sure, but I think from a regional perspective, more than 75% of the companies registered in the region are SMEs. So I think that they're such a big part of the ecosystem, and globally, probably the same size. So we need to have them part of this journey. We cannot exclude them, right? And I think every time a challenge is ahead of us, the typical nature is that you start from a top down, right? And I think this is also what happened after the Paris Agreement. When we started looking to net zero, everybody from top started to say, okay, the biggest company starts this journey and so on, and then we'll see what happens. And I think now everybody's realizing that it's not only top down, it's also bottom up, right? We need everybody included, because if you don't do the bottom up, the top down is never gonna fully succeed, right? And I think that's why it is so important that SMEs are crucial. We will not achieve net zero by 2050 if we don't get SMEs as part of this journey, as simple as that. And I'm very happy and I'm very proud that FAB is a part of this project where we're supporting the SME Climate Hub and can support on that journey, which helps all the different stakeholders and hopefully can ensure a sustainable a transition to net zero.
Amazing. Thank you so much. What a good summary of some of our discussions today. And obviously, we've highlighted the need for collaboration, the need to simplify and make sure we have resources in one place and that it's clear, the fact we can't ignore financial incentives, and the need to help SMEs along this journey and create the right financial incentives, and to keep talking to SMEs about what those are. I also think we've brought out themes of cultural change needed within businesses, and just the need for big businesses, small businesses, all to take climate action. And then, coming back to this collaboration and the SME Climate Hub, and how we can make sure that we're getting SMEs have never heard of climate action before and who have done a lot to all come together and start taking climate action and learn from each other. So I wanted to say thank you so much for everybody for participating in this webinar and joining us today, and particularly also thank you to our panelists for having such a great and rich discussion with each other about all these different facets of such a complicated issue, and really bringing out some ideas and some thoughts about how we can take this forward through collaboration. And I just want to also let you all know that this web series episode will be available on the ADSW live platform soon. Thank you all so much for joining us today and having such a great discussion.
Thank you very much. Maybe the beginning of many conversations.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.